the channel. Today I'm going to be working on the GTO once again, and it's been a very long time since I've done anything to the car, especially drive the car. So what ended up happening was I took the car to the drag strip and the radiator split, and I haven't wanted to drive the car ever since because it was leaking, and no pressure in a cooling system is not a good scenario because you could hurt your engine because you can't really tell if it's overheating or not because there's no pressure in the system. So what I ended up doing was it kind of snowballed. There isn't very many radiator options out there for a 2006 GTO. The car is kind of getting a little bit old, but it was in between a crappy Mishimoto or this newer company I've never heard of. So we're gonna try out the new company. Seemed like pretty good quality. It wasn't that cheap of a radiator, but neither are Mishimoto's anymore. I don't understand why they're so expensive, especially with the quality and all the leaks that I've seen. But let's unbox this radiator, install it, and then I'm gonna have to go grab some coolant from the store. What I ended up getting was a set of silicone hoses to replace the factory ones. The bottom one looks like it's ready to explode as well. And then I got this cold case radiator right here. I've never even heard of this company, but this was the only other option. It was between this and Mishimoto, and I'll never use a Mishimoto radiator. So hopefully we don't have any issues with this. And it looks like it's pretty decent quality. It's supposed to be a direct bolt-in. Now I have the radiator out, and I want to clean some stuff out because there was a lot of leaves in between the radiator and the AC condenser. Plus, I can finally see where the radiator was leaking, which it was on the inside right there. And that's where it's separated, which I can never figure out where it's leaking. I could just see all the coolant on the ground. So this radiator wasn't that great because they, you know, it was in there when the other people had the car and they pulled the engine out, and then I think they're smashing the water pump into the radiator. And this hose, I thought it looked a lot worse in the car than it does out of it, but this will just be a really nice upgrade. So what I'm gonna have to do is keep these rubber donuts right here, and then the ones on the bottom. This one's missing, that one's right there. I'm guessing it is still, yeah, it's still, oh, is it? Is it not? No, it's still down there. You can see it right there. So want to get all that stuff cleaned up. So I now have all the rubber grommets stripped off of the old radiator, and all I need to do, they're pretty simple. They're just donuts. They just go right there. Actually, they go on really nice. Right there. The other two go on the bottom. Actually, I'm probably just gonna put them in the thing because they're so loose, but everything looks pretty decent on this. I guess I'll find out once I start using it. The only thing I do notice is there's a lip on the inside right there. It's not the exact same size. That's just kind of a OCD thing, because when coolant's going to hit that, it's going to make some turbulence. But it is just a 500 horsepower GTO. If I had some my belt sander, I'd probably sand that down. I wonder if this side's the same. Let's see. See, this side isn't as bad, but there's some pretty hefty burrs on the inside of that radiator. You can see in there, kind of see them at the bottom. I want to get it off. Yeah, it's definitely a burr that they didn't grind down. I also cleaned all that oil and grime and dirt that was on the bottom of this rail, so it's nice and clean now. What I'm going to do now is bleed the cooling system. It probably doesn't need to be bled, but I'm going to let it come up to operating temperature and see if it burps. I only got 1 gallon of concentrated coolant, thinking that would be enough because that's 2 gallons reduced. And then I just barely had enough. So I ended up using a coffee strainer or filter and filtering some of this old coolant because it's only a few months old, but it got a bunch of dirt and bugs and stuff in there when I drained it out of the radiator. The radiator is now topped off with coolant, and what I'm going to do now is bleed and burp the system. I don't think there's any air pockets in the system because I have the steam vents set up like this, but just in case, I'm going to bring her up to operating temperature and make sure everything is good to go. I ended up getting a gallon of concentrated coolant, which makes 2 gallons of reduced, but it wasn't enough. So I had to use a coffee filter to strain just a little bit of this coolant right here. It ended up just getting a bunch of bugs and stuff when I drained the coolant out of the factory radiator. So worked perfectly fine. It just took a really long time to get enough to just top her off. And now I have a little bit, so if it burps, I'll be able to fill it up and we'll be ready to take her for her first test drive. I just put air in the GTO's tires because those Foose wheels just continue to leak. I cannot get them to seal all the way. And I have the radiator full of coolant. I want to go drive it around. I've already bled it, brought it up to operating temperature. Hopefully, you know, we may end up having to put some in, but it looks like it's leaking out of the overflow. So that probably means that there's too much fluid in it. So we'll go take this around the block. It's crazy how nice this car is. I can't believe I got this thing for so cheap. The only thing I do not like about it is the intake and this stereo right here. And I wish it was a manual, but for the most part, those wheels, those Foose wheels, I guess that's the third thing, they just are the worst. And you can see by the steering wheel shaking, I cannot get them to balance, I can't get them to seal. I need to find something that fits properly. The front ones actually have a nice offset, the rear ones, I don't know, it looks like a GTO thing, but hopefully I can get that resolved, get some lighter wheels because they're pretty heavy, and probably stick with 18s. I don't want to go really any bigger than that, but yeah, I really love how this car drives. It says I'm like getting 13 to 14 miles per gallon until I give it like a little bit of gas and it's like 7, 6. So far the coolant temp is good. I'm not exactly sure why the electric fans are continuously staying on. This is a day from the future. When I pulled the AC condenser and the radiator and the fan, I had to disconnect the AC pressure switch. If that AC pressure switch is disconnected, the fan is going to continuously run. I plugged it in and now it works perfectly. It turns on and it turns off. I'm very surprised at how cool this radiator is. I just drove it around the block, did a few pulls. I mean, it's cool outside today, but the factory one, all these hoses and everything were like unbearable to touch. And I have a 180-degree thermostat in here anyway, so it shouldn't have been like that. So I'm really happy because now, like, this hose is just lukewarm and this hose is not hot at all, really. So that's really nice. And my gauge isn't even to half. So in the summer, I'll be really good with the radiator. I won't have to worry about, you know, before I really didn't have to worry about much, but it's just a really nice upgrade, which I wasn't expecting. So I'm really happy with this radiator so far. I haven't driven it for very long, so who knows if it's going to have any future issues, but from what I've seen, it's a pretty decent radiator. I'd recommend this over a Mishimoto any day. So what I want to do is let her cool down, so I could pop this cap, make sure this is full of fluid. Finally back home from driving the GTO, and I'm very happy that there wasn't any issues. Sometimes when you put a new radiator in, you have issues with bleeding it, or you have issues with some of the hoses because you have to clamp everything back down, and sometimes they seep, and there wasn't any of those issues. Plus, on top of that, I didn't have any, I mean, this thing is so cool. I just went and took this thing for a few rips, and it's just cool to the touch. It's not super cool. It's probably like 100 and maybe 40 degrees or something, but I could touch it in the hoses, and it's not like the factory radiator where it was unbearable. And then I did have, you know, I already replaced that factory upper radiator hose, and then I replaced both of them again with silicone hoses, so I don't have to worry about anything failing later on down the road. So I'm just happy that I did all this, and now I have AC, I have the new radiator. Super happy that I could drive the GTO and not worry about it anymore. But I still want to do like a 300 or 3000 or 4000 stall torque converter in it. So when I take it to the drags this spring and summer, I can actually do and put down some good times in it, because last year I was doing like 14s and 17s. It was very inconsistent, and it just really bogged down with that big cam. So if you're here, if you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, thumbs up, throw a comment below. As always, see you guys next time.